How's it going? Greg, Jason, how are you guys?
Hey, and
Doing
Jason, you look like you're on top of a horse.
well, of
Just
course.
kind of bounce up and down a little bit, and we'll get the vibe.
Jason joining us from Colorado, and we can tell.
Greg joining from a hotel room at a conference.
Where are you this week, Greg?
Greg is in his natural habitat in a conference hotel.
I'm in Washington for the IMG Task Force biennial conference. It's this really great conference for immigration lawyers that work on doctor cases. So I've been involved with them for a lot of years.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Greg, to join us for Immigration Legal Tech Conversations. And just as a reminder to everybody else, Immigration Legal Tech Conversations is presented by Visa Law AI, immigration intelligence you can trust. And so we're going to explore. We do this we're starting to do this every week, Greg. And I think you gave a great explainer in our last time we talked. We talked about marketing and using AI for your marketing as an immigration lawyer, but exploring the evolving landscape of legal technology. It's changing really rapidly, and so we're going to continue to explore applications that you can use as an immigration lawyer, or really of any sort of lawyer, or maybe you're just interested in the legal applications of technology and where that's going right now. So this week we're going to talk about translation and summarization applications with AI tools for legal professionals. We're going to do some testing. We're going to test a couple different prompts, but Jason, you and I talked a little bit about how important summarization and translation is, especially for an immigration lawyer, and just how different sort of the landscape is between early 20, maybe even just a couple of years ago versus like how people are using translation services now because of AI. And so you've told me a little bit about, you've gotten 300-page documents, dropped on your desk before. How do you deal with a document like that that's 300 pages and is in a different language?
Yeah, so I think it's significant for summarization and translation. On the summarization front, especially immigration lawyers and especially immigration lawyers during the Trump administration are being handed new policies and new rules and all sorts of things. It feels like every day, and some of those, some of them can be massive documents, and they all need to be read by the lawyers, thoroughly before we're advising clients. But it doesn't mean that getting like a quick breakdown of like what's in this 100 pages or 200 pages or 300 pages before you start your calls for the day isn't really meaningful. There was a time when anytime a big piece of immigration law came out, Greg would like take a day and sit there and read the whole thing, write it out into a Word document, and share it with the bar.
I had a brand name.
Yeah,
Siskind summaries.
Yeah, in summaries, and we would rely on Greg and other people, Cyrus, Meta, and other people out there who would just like, kind of digest that, especially in the first, 24, 48 hours that some huge document would be released. So getting an AI summary in, 4 minutes or whatever it takes now is pretty insane progress from where we were. And on the summary front, I would just say, well, with both, we kind of just treat everything as like as a first draft. So I just think about, okay, if I had calls scheduled all day and now there's some new 200-page document I'm supposed to read, maybe there was a time where, you would ask a law clerk like, hey, read this and create like, an explanation for me to digest over lunch of like what this says before I have time to read the whole thing tonight or something like that, and now you can get an AI summary like that. And then on translation, and one more thing just on summary, like with documents like that, I think what's really amazing is just being able to ask for different styles of summaries, right? So it's not like summarization is one thing. You can have a page by page summary. You can have a summary where you boil 200 pages down to 5 pages. You could have a summary where you ask for a chronological, assessment of what's in there or something like that, right? So if you play with the prompts, you can get a lot of different types of outputs. It's not just like a summary is not just one type of document. Like in Gen, there are different summary options, and in other tools as well. Or if you're using a tool where you create the prompt, then you can decide how concise or what kind of guidelines you want on the summary. And then on translations, a big thing for us is that a lot of the time a client sends us a lot of documents that are in another language. And the issue for us is that we don't necessarily know like where the needle is in the haystack. So they send us a 300-page document, and I'm sure there's something important in there, but probably not all 300 pages. And especially if it's like not in Spanish or one of the common languages that someone on our staff, speaks, then for us, a lot of the time it's like, all right, well, we should send that off to a translation service because this is going to be important to the case. But then we get it back and we realize, oh, well, maybe 10 of the 300 pages were important for the case. But now the client has maybe spent hundreds, if not more, dollars on getting a translation that we only needed a fraction of, and also time, right? Because with translation services, they need time as well to work and to translate the documents and all of that. So kind of wasting the client's time and money. Again, on getting like to a first draft of figuring out what is useful. A lot of the time we do still need certified translations, but maybe we only need a certified translation of 10 of the pages instead of 300. And now we're, really getting a better feel for, what should go to the translation company and all of that. So those are some of the, kind of just like high level uses.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is what you mentioned, in the sense that with AI, you can really mold the summary into how you want it to come out, and you can use it in a way that accounts for, what you're looking for, whether you need the information in a chronological order to understand how it's come out, or whether you just need one line, whether you just need, the one line of summary and just explain like, what is this? What am I looking at right now? Versus a more detailed translation.
Sorry, I was just gonna say on that point, something I'll do sometimes with like a summary is, especially if there's like an executive order, and we know it has some sort of immigration impact, but maybe it's not an immigration specific executive order, I'll feed that into an AI and specifically ask, yes, for a summary, but also highlight any time it mentions immigration, highlight any time it mentions the Department of Homeland Security or ICE or whatever it is, the term that I'm trying to identify, right? Immigrants, non-immigrants. And so, yes, you get a summary, but also you could have it pull out the key points that are, important to me, but maybe, less important to someone who practices in another area.
I can give a concrete example of something from just the other day, and Jason will remember this because you were copied on this Teams. So the USCIS issued this new addition to the policy manual, implementing essentially what had been reported in the news about freezing benefit adjudications for people from the 19 travel ban countries that have so far made the list. And the first thing I did was I asked for an AI for summarization of that document. But what I ended up doing with that was I then took that summary, digested it, and was looking over the document itself, and then I asked for an FAQ that we could send to clients, and that it produced a really nice document. Jason, you saw that I think in our internal teams, and that was a first draft of a very detailed FAQ that we could send out to clients. That we did some review and we changed some things about it, but it was substantively excellent as far as what it was catching. There were a few nuanced points that we decided that we needed to tweak in there, but that's something that I would classify as a summarization job on there. I mean, it's basically give the lowdown. And so you could actually ask for in summarization, and some if you with the right prompt, you could always ask it just to turn anything into an FAQ for you as the lawyer, just to sort of, a lot of people digest documents better when they're in a Q&A format like that. So that's another way that you can think about summarization, is not just sort of a straight, paragraph setup. You can get it done all in bullet points. You can get it done as an FAQ. You can have it done in a lot of different ways, other than just a, whatever the AI decides is a summary.
I think a good practice is, like, as you're using AI more and more, is like figuring out like what is the next task, not the first task. Like if you use ChatGPT or one of those, I mean, like the newer ChatGPTs, like they're so good at like suggesting the next prompt. It's like, oh, okay, here's the summary. Do you want me to turn this into a spreadsheet? Do you want me to turn this into a, like whatever? Like they come up with so many. Do you want me to add a column that lists this other thing that you didn't include? But kind of thinking about like that next task, it's like, okay, here's a summary. Now, what do I want to use this summary for? An FAQ, an email, whatever. Here's a translation, document that needs to be translated. Like translate it and summarize it, or translate it and pull out, these important terms, or whatever it is, right? Like what's the like continued process, with the set of prompts.
Yeah, and I think those are great examples. Just a point of housekeeping for anybody who's on the stream with us today. We had a bit of an issue getting to LinkedIn earlier, but all is not lost. If you are coming in late today, this recording will be available on YouTube, and it should also be available in full on LinkedIn as well. But just point of order there. And you can also leave a comment if you've got any questions as we talk today. As always, you should also follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe on YouTube, just so you can stay up to date with anything else that we come out with. But I think, one of the important things, sort of looking from translation to translation, and Jason, you mentioned this, when you get a large document, whether, full of client information that may be in a different language and you need to translate it, you may need a certified translation, but you may not need a certified translation for the entire document. And just from a business standpoint, that could save you hundreds of dollars, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we sometimes receive translation quotes that are, over $1,000. I mean, if it's a lot of documents, and translations are, they take real educated people's real time, and so they're expensive things to get. Certified translations.
And what we're seeing now. Oh, go ahead, Greg.
No, I was just going to mention as well, you can do a translation and summarization combined. So it may be that you feed in a fairly long document in one language and you say, give me a summarization in English. And that's maybe what you want, or you may want to do it that way. And I'm just reminded when I travel sometimes, and I'll use ChatGPT, the mobile, point the camera at some longer thing that I don't really need a whole translation of it, but I just ask ChatGPT, what is this? And it'll give me a couple of sentences about what this longer it might be on a statue, or it might be at wherever it is, but it is handy that has those kind of capabilities, instead of just giving you straight translation, which is helpful, but it may be more than what you need.
I mean, like most assignments for an AI, I think the lawyer has to sit there and think like, okay, like how accurate does this need to be, and then based on that and based on the content, like, am I choosing the right tool or an appropriate tool for this job, right? So like, there's nothing confidential about an executive order. I can feed executive orders into ChatGPT or whatever and get a really powerful large language model's results. I can prompt that to create an FAQ. There's nothing confidential about our FAQs. We send them out, freely, things like that. That's obviously different from like translate 300 pages of my client's personal documents, right? You can't use a large language, a public, general large language model for that. You need to be using like an appropriate, secure tool. Legal.
We're only talking about right now about translating from a foreign language to your language. We haven't even gotten into translating the other direction, where a lot of us have communications with clients that they're not great English speakers and could benefit from having communications done in that language. And I was, I was telling you sort of about the little trick that you can use to see how good a job it does translating to that foreign language, and that is take whatever you're wanting to send your clients, the email or the FAQ or whatever that's in English. Ask the AI to translate it to the other language, maybe ChatGPT. If it's not anything confidential, and then go into Claude or go into Gemini and take that foreign language document that was produced by ChatGPT and ask Claude or Gemini to translate it back to English. And if they, if they don't resemble each other really closely, there's a problem. But usually they do. But it is one way to see if they sort of miss some nuance or something like that in the translation. And you don't have to. Claude and Gemini don't have any loyalty to ChatGPT, so they'll call it like they see it when it comes to grading another model. So you don't have to really have the same trust. If you did the same task in ChatGPT and said translate it back, it probably would be honest with you and give you it's you don't have to take the chance.
Well, since you brought it up, Greg, we can go ahead and do a live test for everybody, and in this test we'll take a 601A sample qualifying relative statement. So this is totally this is made up. This is a sample question or a sample document, but we're going to take this, and I will go ahead and get this booted up on the stream. So you see we've got Claude ready here. So I'm going to copy this statement from Juan Rodriguez. And we're going to go in and add this to Claude with the instructions. So you see I've just pasted that in. And this is in English, and we're going to translate this to Spanish. So we will ask Claude to translate the following into Spanish. And I can make sure we've got everything spelled right here. So we'll send this into Claude. We'll get our translation here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this translation. As you can see, it's done a good job here quickly translating this into Spanish. And once I get this, I'm going to copy this. And we're going to go to Gemini here. ChatGPT, everybody's always using ChatGPT, so I figured we'd use Claude and Gemini as some good examples here. And so we'll ask this to translate the following back into English from Spanish. All right, so you can see we've got our copy here, and we're ready to go. So we'll send that into Gemini. And so if we look at this compared to our sample statement, which I'll throw in here, to whom it may concern, my name is Juan Rodriguez, and I find myself in a difficult situation. This looks pretty good. So we've got a pretty great translation from Claude here. Gemini confirming that Claude did a good job with this. So pretty good job there from Claude to translate that into a good usable translation that we could,
Mario.
I mean, I guess the other common version of like this test is using Google Translate, right? So you feed the document into, whichever one of your favorite general LLMs, and then the question is like, did it do a better or worse job than Google Translate, which uses AI but operates differently than the large language models used like neural networks.
Jason, have you seen any, or Ian, seen anybody who's actually kind of done a comparison on how the generative AI models are doing versus the traditional AI translation?
Yes, and they're doing amazingly well. There's some published studies out there on the subject. So they do different things well. Like Google Translate, uses these enormous like multilingual models. They use a lot of like very, very famous, well-known texts, things like that. I mean, there's also like 200 plus languages in Google Translate now, so it's pretty, robust. But it tends to, at least in the studies I read, like tends to maybe excel at like word for word translation, where the large language model tools are often really good, or even surprisingly better at picking up like nuance or tone, or like the writer's style, and like trying to keep that in the translation, where Google Translate may give more of a like the exact translation. Like a Chat GPT might kind of use the context of the entire phrase and kind of pick up the tone better. Things like that, like euphemisms tend to be an issue in Google Translate and work better in large language models. So it is interesting because, I mean, Google Translate is trained entirely to translate. I mean, that's what it does. And these large language models, like, that's not what they were created for. But I think it's just like what we continue to find is there's all of these like things that they're really good at that weren't necessarily, the number one priority in what they were built for.
Right. And so I've gone over here to Google Translate, and I've just added sort of our first sentence here. And you can see in this instance, Google Translate does actually a pretty good job of translating sort of the first part of this letter. But this letter was also, as you said, like it doesn't contain a lot of euphemisms or colloquialisms. We know that Google Translate does struggle with that from time to time. I've actually got a couple of examples as well for some of these, colloquialisms. One I've got here said, okay, C, which is Google Translate is thinking this is, will it be yes? Which is not, that's one of these examples of an exact translation. But actually this is a little bit more of a nuanced phrase, and it means more along the lines of, I wonder if so. And so this is sort of an example of what you were talking about, Jason, and the way that Google Translate can sometimes struggle with these word-for-word translations. And so I just wanted to highlight that for us.
Google Translate is just cut and paste into the window, or do they have the ability to upload documents? And I mean, that's one of the things I like about the chatbots, the language models, is that you can just paste an entire multi-page document in. Where when I've used Google Translate, it's usually just for translating a paragraph here or there.
You can upload full documents.
Okay.
There's I think myself included, and probably most people, we just like hit Google Translate and kind of do it on the like Google landing page a lot of the time, like what Ian was just doing. But if you actually like go into the Google Translate page,
documents, you can upload documents there.
Yeah, documents, websites. A lot of the time you just get like the prompt when you're on a website in a foreign language, but you can actually like input the URL and get translations that way.
Yeah, so that's a good tip. And so we were able to see there sort of, at least in this one example. And, I am curious, Jason or Greg, what is the most, to what extent can you use the AI services for translation? Like you mentioned uploading documents. What is the largest document that you've had the chance to maybe translate?
I actually, when I was testing initially with Jen, I wanted to see how translation would work on long documents, and I was like, how am I going to know whether it did a good job or not? And I did a translation / summarization test on there just to see how it would do, because one of the things with Feasible AI is that we didn't really mention this, but one of the limitations of the language models like ChatGPT is there's a size limit, a token limit on how big the documents are that you can put in. And we've we figured out a way with our software we can upload things of any size. So what I ended up doing was I went on to what is it, the Project Gutenberg, which is this website that has sort of public domain books and things like that. And I got it was in 5 parts, but Les Miserables by Victor Hugo is like a 1,500-page book. And I took part 1 and I uploaded that in and asked it to actually put it, I used summarization. I didn't use the translation tool. I uploaded it into summarization, and I had I'm trying to remember, or maybe I did it in the translation, but in any case, I knew the story really well because I've read the book a couple times, and and it's one of my favorites. And and I was able to, so I could verify that it got the plot and everything correctly summarized as far as what it was doing on there. But that was probably 300 pages what I was trying there, and that was the only way I could think of to actually verify that it did a good job on on at least understanding what it was digesting, because I would know if it was screwing around with the plot or hallucinating on there. So that was an early example, but it worked well 2 years ago when I tried that.
Yeah, that's a really good use case. I didn't know, Greg, you were a big Les Mis fan.
I like Victor Hugo. I like Hunchback of Notre Dame also.
I love that.
But we've been talking about the translations and on there. I did hopefully we should mention as well about how great the generative AI is on translating voice, and that's something that I've also experimented with. But it's probably worth mentioning a little bit about that. I can say a few things with you if we're at that point on our agenda.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, take it away, Greg. I know that the voice sort of there's sort of new frontiers that we're approaching, right? There's there's the one use case where hopefully at some point we'll be able to do sort of you'll be on a Zoom call similar to this with a client, and you could, say something and it be automatically translated as it goes through. And you've talked a little about as well. We talked about this in our marketing meeting. These sort of softwares that let you translate, take a video of yourself and then you can turn it into.
I'm going to talk about that in a second. But in the meantime, if you have the newer versions of these things, the Apple's AirPods. And there are other products out there that are doing it as well, but they've been building in simultaneous translation into their latest beta models for your AirPods. And so, I guess when GPT 4.5 or 4.0 debuted, they did when OpenAI did its live event on there, and they had the 3 people sitting around having a conversation back. The 3 OpenAI employees, or 2 OpenAI employees, were having a back and forth conversation between in Italian and English on there, and the ChatGPT was able to do a pretty good job. And this is like 2 years ago or a year and a half ago of doing simultaneous translation. And the models have only gotten better, and we have one comment talking about open source models that can do that as well. There's a lot of really interesting work that's happening in that space. And for immigration lawyers, I think that's going to be really very, very helpful tech. And I'm already been chatting with one company that is doing this as a Zoom plugin, essentially, where they're doing for legal conversations, where the lawyer and the client will be on a Zoom and able to actually have a consultation without having to have a translator participate, which is huge.
I think
it makes for a better conversation. You don't have to worry about the we know Jason and I will notice a lot of times with somebody brings their own translator that the person is not really translating word for word what's happening. They're kind of just describing the answer to the other and back and forth. on there. So that's something I think we'll see more and more of in immigration practices. That kind of technology. I was going to mention something about the avatars because there's a plot line on Apple TV's The Morning Show, where and I'm sure a lot of people have probably seen it. It's a good show, and the plot line is that the network, the news network, or the network that's they work for, has won the rights to to broadcast the Paris Olympics, and they show I guess for the advertisers or whatever, but they show this clip of Jennifer Aniston, um, basically making the promo for the network's Olympic coverage that's going to be coming later that summer. And then they show her speaking it in Chinese and Italian and all these other languages in her voice and with her lips moving and everything like basically looking smooth as can be on there. And that is it's I think for most of the American public, that's probably the first time they've ever seen anything like that. Was probably on this TV show where they with that technology, the way it works. There actually is software that I started trying out a couple of years ago. Well, it was in mid 2023, late 2023, called HN, and it's pretty cool software, but it's basically avatar software where it's using the same technique. You have you film. You record yourself reading a script for about 2 or 3 minutes, and it tells you to move your head around and do other things. And, as far as like kind of training it, and then you have an avatar that you can feed lines into. So when I've done this, I recorded a test. I should have brought it for today, but I recorded a test at the time for audiences when I do talks on AI, and I read like a one sentence in English, and then it shows me. But that program as well is also translate. You can pick what language you want, and it will translate whatever you're speaking, whatever you've recorded, or whatever's in your. You feed a script in, it will give you that same script in whatever language you want, and then you're speaking it. And not only are you speaking it, but you're speaking it without really an accent or a pretty neutral accent. You don't sound like an American, like basically reading something in Spanish. And it's something that I would think, look, this is all deepfakes. That's basically how deepfakes work. And what in this morning show episode, that's actually what happens, where there's that technology is used against the network in a deepfake using some similar technology. But it's not a it's not a deep fake if A, it's your avatar, and B, you're transparent with, when you're putting it out there that this was was originally recorded in whatever language. You can put a little disclaimer on there just so people know on there. But I think it's a really helpful tool potentially for a lot of lawyers, especially a lot of lawyers who like doing video. There's a lot of lawyers who prefer doing recorded streams, or they like doing TikToks, or they like doing things where they're. I'm more of a written word guy, but on there. But a lot of lawyers, that's how they prefer to do it. And the idea of being able to take those and turn it into whatever language that you want, I think, is pretty appealing as from a marketing perspective, but also maybe explainers for your clients that you can send embedded in an email that you're sending out is another use case that you can use, in the same way on there. So that's a technology that is new, but it's pretty advanced for how new it is.
I haven't personally played with it much, but there are products like DeepL which already have like. Basically, it joins your Zoom call with you. It's, eventually, it's like a translation bot. It joins the call with you. And now, if you two were speaking whatever Italian, then I would be getting like subtitles on my screen of real-time translations of what you all were saying. So, again, I haven't used it much, but I've just watch videos and things like that. But it seems like that's the latest frontier, not the future frontier. It's kind of already that sort of stuff is already here, which for immigration is unbelievable. Not only is getting translators pricey and whatever else, but often the people in your office who speak multiple languages are busy doing other things, because they're really smart, and so they don't want to just be translating. They have other stuff to do other than translate for you all day. And then the other thing that happens to me, sometimes is like I'm booked on a call with someone who, requires a translator, but it kind of gets missed along the way of scheduling that the person needs a translator. And now me and the person are on the call and no one realized that, to call the translator. And so it's also just a convenience factor of not having to borrow another person's time, but also, not ending up in situations where it's we scramble to resolve this for you. So
what's the name of that software? And maybe Ian, you can put it in the put it a banner app so people can get to that website to
sure.
the plugin.
You said DeepL, Jason?
Here, I can share it. DeepL. Yeah. Don't take it as a huge endorsement because it is really impressive to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know coming from the visa law side of things, we do know that people on these translation services are very much in demand. We've seen on our side a huge increase month over to month of our translation services, and
that's sleeper hit in the product that I wasn't aware until we saw some of that data that part of what we have is so popular on there. I actually was
people are doing a lot of translations in Gen. And then the other thing, again, do your own research on DeepL, but what stood out when I was researching those products was it checked a lot of the kind of security and compliance boxes lawyers would be looking to check. Again, not an endorsement, but it had GDPR, SOC 2, ISO, bring your own key encryption, a lot of the things that you would want to see before inviting it to an attorney's call, seem to be there at least at first review.
And I think that's a good point in time to sort of bring up our usual disclaimer about using AI and some of the ethical considerations that we have to keep into place. Whether it's summarization, whether it's translation, the lawyer always has to be in the loop because it's your obligation, your ethical obligation to make sure that even if you summarize something, that you can come back and find the right references and understand what you're regurgitating if it's come through an AI. And I think that pretty much, if there's any other questions, I'd love to field those. There's a couple more things that we should mention as we sort of wrap up today. If you're interested in learning more, from Visa Law AI or just getting our newsletter, you can sign up for that with this QR code, which I hope is right over here above my hand on your screen. And it's a great place. We'll send out a good prompt to use if you're ever using translation services. And I'll give you, we'll send that out in this month's newsletter, just sort of so you have something to take away that you can copy and paste and use immediately. So you can sign up for that here, scan that QR code as well. And Greg, is there, you can go ahead and give us the summary on, as we close out today, on why Vanderbilt should have gotten in the college football playoff.
Oh, don't get me started. Strength of record.
There you go.
Strength of wins.
Or maybe we
had 2 losses versus that team to the south of us that had 3 losses. I could come up with a lot of reasons why they the quarterback who's a major Heisman candidate. He was very exciting to watch on there. They had a long list of good reasons. Cinderella story, that would have been a good one for a team that went 30 some odd years without a winning season. That streak only ended a couple of years ago, and to be in the running right now. So Yeah, good job, college football playoffs.
Well, the irony, Greg, is I think if
Good luck, Tulane.
the irony is if we were in the BCS era and we still had a computer doing this, I think that Vanderbilt probably would have gotten in. But here we are. So
human intelligence.
Well, that about closes it up for us today. Just as another reminder for anybody who's coming in, either at the tail end of this, you can find us on LinkedIn. Afterwards, you can find it on YouTube. Just search Visa Law AI. You can find us, subscribe, follow Greg on LinkedIn, and make sure that you stay up to date with all the latest in immigration legal tech. And we'll be excited to come to you in 2 weeks. I think we'll be back here, Greg, on the 23rd. I think we're going to talk about, I should check my calendar if that's the 23rd or not, the 22nd, talking about an interesting sort of pre-holiday conversation about how you can use AI to, plan some fun, tours for yourself, some walking tours, and maybe
Shopping.
test out, some shopping as well.
For the last minute shoppers, that will be timely.
That's right. Just before the holidays, just perfectly in time. And so we'll have all of that for you on the 22nd. So be on the lookout for that on LinkedIn and YouTube and otherwise. But other than that, Greg, Jason, I appreciate you guys taking some time today. And absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks everyone.
All right. Till next time, guys.